Welcome to another episode of She's Evolving. I'm Elena, a medical doctor specializing in endocrinology and female longevity. Today, we are stepping away from the microscope for a moment, though not entirely, to talk about a transformation that isn't just happening in our cells, but in our souls. We're talking about the monumental, terrifying, and exhilarating decision to change careers after the age of 40. Is it a stroke of courage? Or is it, as some might whisper, a moment of madness?
And I'm Julia, a clinical psychologist. I spend my days helping women navigate the intricate landscapes of their emotions, their self-esteem, and their identities. This topic is so close to my heart because in my practice, I see a recurring theme. Women in their 40s and 50s who have done everything right, reached the top of their respective ladders, and suddenly realized the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. Today, we want to validate that feeling. We want to talk about why reinvention isn't just a midlife crisis cliche, but a legitimate, powerful choice for the modern woman. If you've ever looked at your professional life and felt like a stranger in your own office, this conversation is for you. Before we dive deep, don't forget to follow our podcast and share this episode with that one friend who's currently contemplating a big move. Let's evolve together.
You know, Julia, before we get into the technicalities of why our brains and bodies react the way they do to these shifts, I want to share something personal. People see me as Dr. Elena, the endocrinologist. They see the years of med school, the residency, the established practice. But about 5 years ago, right when I turned 47, I hit a wall. It wasn't that I stopped loving medicine, but I realized I was exhausted by the system of medicine. I found myself sitting in my car for 20 minutes before going into the clinic, just breathing, trying to find the strength to face another day of back-to-back appointments. I actually considered quitting medicine entirely to open a landscape design business. My husband thought I was losing my mind. My colleagues thought it was burnout. But for me, it felt like my body was literally rejecting my current reality. My cortisol was through the roof, I wasn't sleeping, and I felt this physical itch to be someone else.
That itch you're describing, Elena, is something I hear about every single week. It's fascinating that you mentioned your husband's reaction, because that's often the first barrier, the external gaze. For many women, their identity is so tied up in their professional title. You weren't just Elena, you were Dr. Elena. To walk away from that feels like a death of sorts. I remember a client, let's call her Sarah, who was a high-powered corporate lawyer. She turned 43 and decided she wanted to become a yoga instructor and a holistic nutritionist. The backlash she got from her family was intense. They called it the most expensive hobby in history. But Sarah told me something I'll never forget. Julia, I've spent 20 years arguing for things I don't care about. If I don't spend the next 20 doing something that feeds my spirit, I don't think I'll make it to 60.
That is so powerful. And it's not just spiritual, is it? There's a biological component to this. In our 40s, as our estrogen levels begin their long, slow decline during perimenopause, something interesting happens in the female brain. Many researchers suggest that the nurturing or people-pleasing filters, often driven by higher hormonal levels in our younger years, start to thin out. We stop caring so much about social expectations. We start asking, what about me? It's almost as if our biology is giving us a window of clarity to reassess our path.
Exactly. It's a neurological recalibration. In psychology, we often refer to the first half of life as the period where we build the container, our education, our careers, our families, our social standing. The second half of life, starting around 40 or 45, is about what we put inside that container. If the container is full of stress, resentment, and should-haves, we start to feel a profound sense of cognitive dissonance. Changing careers at this stage isn't madness, it's an attempt to resolve that dissonance. It's the psyche's way of saying, the mask no longer fits. But let's be real for a second, Julia. It's also incredibly scary. When we talk about courage or madness, the madness part usually refers to the practicalities, finances, the fear of being a beginner again at an age where you're supposed to be an expert, and the ageism that unfortunately exists in the job market. From a health perspective, chronic stress from a job you hate is a slow poison. It increases systemic inflammation, it ruins your gut health, and it accelerates aging. So while people might think it's crazy to leave a stable salary, I often ask, what is the cost of staying? What is the price of your health? That's the ultimate question. We tend to calculate the risk of leaving, but we rarely calculate the risk of staying. Staying in a soul-crushing job leads to what I call identity erosion. You lose the sense of who you are outside of your productivity. And when we talk about being a beginner at 40, there's actually a secret weapon we have that 22-year-olds don't: meta skills. By 40, you know how to solve problems. You know how to manage people. You know how to handle a crisis. You're not starting from zero. You're starting from experience. I love that. Starting from experience. Let's dive into some of the technical shifts though, because I think it helps women feel less crazy when they understand the why. After 40, our brain's neuroplasticity is still very much alive, contrary to the old myths. However, the way we learn changes. We become better at crystalline intelligence, using the knowledge we've accumulated over decades to solve new problems. So a woman moving from finance to interior design isn't just starting over. She's bringing 20 years of project management, budgeting, and client psychology into a creative field. Her brain is actually wired to be more efficient at this stage. And emotionally, there's a shift in what motivates us. In our 20s, it's often about status and acquisition. In our 40s, it shifts toward generativity, a term coined by Erik Erikson. We want to leave a mark. We want our work to mean something. This is why we see so many women moving toward helping professions, creative endeavors, or entrepreneurship. They want to own their time because they've realized that time is the only non-renewable resource they have. Speaking of time, I get so many questions about the physical ability to keep up with a career change. Elena, I'm too tired to learn something new, or my memory isn't what it used to be. And I always tell them, your brain is a muscle. If you stay in a repetitive, uninspiring job, your cognitive functions actually start to dim because they aren't being challenged. Switching careers is like a high-intensity interval training session for your brain. It forces the creation of new neural pathways. It can actually be a protective factor against cognitive decline as we age. That's a brilliant point. It's basically brain Botox, but from the inside out. Let's address some of the common myths we hear, because I think they act as anchors, keeping women stuck. One of the biggest myths is that it's too late to be successful in a new field. Oh, I hear that one all the time. But look at Vera Wang. She didn't enter the fashion industry until she was 40. Julia Child didn't write her first cookbook until she was 50. The idea that success has an expiration date is a corporate myth designed to keep people in their places. Another myth is that a career change has to be a 180-degree flip. Sometimes reinvention isn't about quitting your job and moving to a farm in Tuscany, although if you can, go for it. Sometimes it's about a pivotal shift. It's taking the core of what you do and applying it in a way that aligns with your current values. It's about the legitimacy of the choice. You don't need a good enough reason to change. Wanting to be happier is a sufficient reason.
And what about the myth of financial ruin? This is the one that keeps most women awake at night. I have a mortgage, I have kids in college, and yes, those are real responsibilities, but reinvention doesn't have to be impulsive. It can be a slow burn. You can spend 2 years transitioning. You can build your side hustle or get your new certification while you're still in your old role. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting in spite of it with a solid plan.
I often tell my patients to do a values audit. Write down what mattered to you at 22, and then write down what matters to you now at 45. Usually, the lists are completely different. At 22, maybe high salary and prestigious title were at the top. At 45, maybe flexibility, creativity, and autonomy have taken their place. If your career is still serving your 22-year-old self's values, no wonder you're miserable. You've outgrown your life. And outgrowing something isn't a failure. It's a sign of evolution. That is so true. I also want to touch on the invisible woman syndrome. Many women feel that after 40, they become invisible in the workplace. Instead of fighting for a seat at a table where they aren't being seen, why not build your own table? This is why the rise of female entrepreneurs over 40 is skyrocketing. We are realizing that we have the wisdom, the network, and the don't give a damn attitude required to lead. There's a certain liberation in that don't give a damn phase, isn't there? It's what I call the midlife metamorphosis. Like a caterpillar in a cocoon, the old structure has to dissolve before the butterfly can emerge. That dissolution phase is messy. It feels like a crisis. It feels like madness. You're neither the caterpillar nor the butterfly. You're just goo. But that goo phase is where the magic happens. If you're feeling like goo right now, lost, confused, uncertain, know that it's a necessary part of the process.
I love that metaphor. And for the women listening who are worried about the physical toll of the GU phase, the anxiety, the sleepless nights, remember to support your body through the transition. This is the time for radical self-care, not just bubble baths, but real foundational health. Prioritize protein, lift heavy weights to keep your bones and metabolic rate high, and manage your light exposure to protect your sleep. A healthy body provides the stable platform your mind needs to take these big leaps. Exactly. Your 40s and 50s are not the beginning of the end. They are the beginning of your true self. You've spent decades meeting everyone else's expectations, your parents, your bosses, your children, society. Now you finally have the tools and the permission to meet your own. Reinvention is not just possible, it is your right. It is a legitimate path to a longer, healthier, and more vibrant life. We've covered a lot today, from the biological shifts that clear our vision to the psychological frameworks that allow us to rebuild. Remember, you don't have to do it all in one day. One small step toward your new path is still a step. Maybe today it's just researching a course, or updating your LinkedIn, or having a dreaming session with a glass of wine. And remember, you aren't alone. There is a whole community of women evolving right alongside you. If this episode resonated with you, please share it. Let's start a movement where we stop asking, "Is it too late?" and start asking, "What's next?" Thank you for joining us on She's Evolving. I'm Julia. And I'm Elena. Keep evolving, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep choosing yourself. We'll see you in the next episode. The music swells back to the foreground, a triumphant and steady beat that carries the listener forward. It lingers for a few seconds before fading out completely. You know, Elena, what you just said about the brain's plasticity is so vital because it dismantles the biggest lie we've been told, that after a certain age, our hard drive is full. Many women come to my office feeling like they are obsolete software. They look at a 22-year-old who understands every new AI tool or social media trend, and they feel a sense of panic. They think, if I try to learn something new now, I'll be a joke. But as you mentioned, the mature brain has something a 20-year-old brain doesn't, a massive library of patterns. We learn differently, but we learn more deeply. We connect dots that younger people can't even see yet. Exactly. And it's not just about the how we learn, but why we learn. In our 20s, we are often driven by external validation, the degree, the salary, the title that will impress our parents or peers. By 45, that dopamine hit from a title usually fades. We start looking for a different kind of fuel. And this is where the courage part of our title comes in. It takes immense courage to admit that the path you've walked for 2 decades no longer leads to a destination you care about. It's like realizing halfway through a marathon that you're running in the wrong direction. Most people keep running because they've already put in 13 miles. But the wise ones, they stop, catch their breath, and turn around. That sunk cost fallacy is a trap, isn't it? The idea that I've invested 20 years in law, so I must stay in law even if it's killing my spirit. I often ask my patients, if you had a bank account and you realized you were losing $100 every day, would you keep the account open just because you've had it for 20 years? Of course not. So why do we do that with our mental health and our time? Time is the only currency we can't earn back. And speaking of currency, let's address the elephant in the room, the physical toll of staying in a career that has lost its meaning. As an endocrinologist, I see the burnout body every day. High cortisol levels, chronic inflammation, sleep cycles that are completely shattered because the mind can't stop racing at 3 a.m. When you are 25, your body can bounce back from a stressful week. At 48, your body keeps the score. Changing careers isn't just a professional move. For many women, it's a medical necessity. It's a literal life-saving intervention. That is such a powerful perspective, Elena. It's a health intervention. And that leads us perfectly into our next segment, which I know many of our listeners have been waiting for, the mitos y dudas frecuentes, the myths and the common questions we get from the She's Evolving community. Let's dive into some of these fears that keep us awake at night. I love this part. Let's start with the classic one. I hear this all the time. Elena, I'm 47. If I start a new career now, I'll be 52 by the time I'm actually good at it. Isn't that too late? Oh, that's a favorite. And my answer is always the same. Whether you start the new career or not, you are still going to be 52 in 5 years. Do you want to be a 52-year-old who is 5 years into a new, fulfilling journey, or a 52-year-old who is still miserable in the same spot? Time doesn't stop for our indecision. The too late myth is based on the idea that life ends at 60, but we are looking at a generation of women who will likely be active, vibrant, and working into their 70s. If you change at 45, you still have 25 or 30 years of professional life ahead of you. That's an entire lifetime. It really is. Another myth I want to tackle is the financial suicide myth. People think career change means going from a CEO salary to an intern salary. While there might be a transition period, reinvention often means leveraging your existing skills in a new, more profitable way. You're not starting from zero. You're starting from experience. A woman who spent 20 years in corporate management and decides to become a consultant for small businesses isn't starting over. She's transferring power. Transferring power. I love that phrasing. It reminds me of a question we received from a listener named Sandra. She asked, "How do I deal with the judgment of my family? They think I'm having a midlife crisis because I want to leave my stable job to open a holistic wellness center."
Sandra, if wanting to be happy and healthy is a crisis, then we should all be having one. But Julia, from a psychological standpoint, why are families so resistant to our changes?
It's usually about their own insecurity, Elena. When you change the script of your life, you inadvertently force the people around you to look at their own scripts. If you show that it's possible to reinvent yourself, they have to face the fact that they are staying in their own ruts out of fear, not necessity. Your courage is a mirror they aren't ready to look into. My advice to Sandra is always, set boundaries. You don't need their permission to evolve. You only need your own. And let's talk about the junior fear. A lot of women say, "I can't bear the thought of being the oldest person in the room and having a 25-year-old boss." That's a big ego hit for sure. But here's the secret. That 25-year-old boss is likely terrified of you. They have the technical skills, but they don't have the emotional intelligence, the conflict resolution skills, or the perspective that you bring. If you enter that space with humility, but also with the awareness of your own value, you become an elder stateswoman. You become the mentor they didn't know they needed. It's about changing the narrative from "I am behind" to "I am bringing a different kind of depth."
I've seen that happen in medicine too. We have residents who started med school at 40. They might not remember every biochemical formula as fast as the 22-year-olds, but when they walk into a patient's room, they have a level of empathy and life experience that makes them incredible doctors. The patient doesn't care if the doctor was the fastest at the exam. They care that the doctor understands their pain.
Exactly. Now, as we move toward the end of this conversation, I want us to reflect on the word legitimate. Our title says, Professional Reinvention as a Possible and Legitimate Choice. Why do we feel we need to justify wanting more? Why do we feel that if we have a good job on paper, we are being ungrateful for wanting something else?
It's that old societal stay-in-your-lane mentality. But the truth is, the lane we were in at 25 was built for a woman who no longer exists. Our hormones have shifted, our priorities have shifted, our view of the world has expanded. It is not only legitimate to change, I would argue it is a sign of high intelligence and health. It shows you are listening to your internal compass.
I couldn't agree more. If you are listening to this and your heart is racing because you've been thinking about a change, please know that racing heart isn't just anxiety, it's excitement. It's your soul telling you there's more. You aren't crazy for wanting a life that feels like yours. You are courageous for refusing to settle for a life that feels like a costume. And remember, this transition doesn't have to happen overnight. You don't have to quit your job tomorrow morning. You can start by taking a course, by networking in a new field, by dating your new career while you still have the security of the old one. This is about a calculated evolution, not a reckless leap. Beautifully said, Elena. As we wrap up this episode of She's Evolving, I want every woman listening to take a deep breath. Feel the weight of your experience, the strength of your years, and the infinite possibilities of your future. You are not at the end of the road. you are just at a very interesting crossroads.
Thank you for being with us today. If this conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a friend who is also questioning her path. Let's create a movement of women who aren't afraid to reinvent themselves at any age. Because when one of us evolves, we all move forward. Follow us on our social channels, subscribe to the podcast, and remember, your second act might just be the best part of the play. Stay curious, stay bold, and keep evolving. We'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye for now, and take that first small step today. You've got this.